It's 1798 in northwest Wales, and an area of marshland by the Irish Sea has been bought by the London-based entrepreneur William Maddox. Maddox builds an embankment to reclaim the marsh from the sea and sets out his vision to build a new turnpike route to Dublin via Porth Dinllaen. He establishes a new town to act as a staging post and regional hub for transporting goods. The Irish traffic ceased with the development of Telford's road to Holyhead, but his planned town of Tremadog was born. The population were employed primarily at the woolen mill and the coaching inn. Maddox had long planned for a church to be built on a rocky outcrop by the town. The Calvinistic Methodists had been holding a Sunday school in a house in the town since 1805, and in 1808 they presented a petition requesting a chapel. Maddox granted them a parcel of land on a 99-year lease for the construction of a meeting house. To the astonishment of the established church, Maddox not only allowed the project, but encouraged it. He was to write later, "In education and religion, all ought to have fair play." The Bishop of Bangor criticised the decision, but Maddox defended himself using the biblical parable of the wise and foolish builders. He explained that the church would be built on rock, while the chapel would be built on sand, which in this case was geologically true. Early chapels were simply constructed, with plain exteriors that looked more like domestic buildings than places of worship. But Tremadog Chapel was to be different. Both the scale and plan of the building were a turning point in chapel building in Wales. The chapel was one of the biggest buildings in the town and one of the first to be completed. The Anglican Church of St Mary's was finished 18 months later. The opening of the chapel in February 1810 was a grand affair and attended by the great and the good of the time. Present at the opening was Maddox's friend, the Welsh poet Twm o'r Nant, famed for his interludes promoting the moral and religious values of Methodism and a curious sense of dress. This was his last public appearance before his death. Other attendees were Robert Jones, publisher of the first Welsh hymn book for the Calvinist Methodists, and John Elias, a popular preacher in Wales. The opening sermon was given by Thomas Charles of Bala, a prominent preacher of the day.
Amen.
The chapel was registered as Peniel on the 14th of March 1810. The building became a focal point for the community, with activities for most days of the week. It is unclear what the original facade looked like. The cost of the chapel was £858, a third of which was spent on timber, and nearly as much on carpenters as on stonemasons. Maddox promised £50 towards the build, but only gave 10. The present columns date from 1849 and were erected by John and Gershon Thomas of Porthmadog. This design may have been influenced by Maddox's London connections, closely imitating the Greek temple front of Inigo Jones's St Paul Church in Covent Garden. A further link might be made through the fact that he named his theatre in Tremadog Covent Garden. The grand facade was impressive, using the classical style in a way unprecedented in Wales. The design of Peniel went on to play a fundamental part in popularising the use of gable facades and auditorium-style interiors. It also promoted classical architecture as a preferred style for nonconformist builders, standing apart from the Gothic architecture of the established church. Two full-width slate steps lead up to a giant Tuscan portico of 2 columns, the triangular pediment sporting a wheel window and panel spandrels. At the rear of the portico are 2 entrances, flanking a central sash window with 3 further windows above. The side elevations are built in large, irregular blocks of stone and each have further 12-pane sash windows. Further intrigue to the mystery of the facade is provided by Maddox's intention to build a classical temple of Neptune overlooking the sea. He commissioned a design from the renowned architect Sir William Gell, who had illustrated classical temples on his travels around the Mediterranean. Maddox passed away before the building was started, and the design for the temple is now lost. But a contemporary letter offers the opinion that the design was instead used at Peniel. Over the years, improvements were carried out at Peniel. In 1840, an end gallery was added to accommodate the increasing congregation. In 1865, panelled box pews divided into 3 main blocks replaced the original benches. In 1880, Aneel Gallery was built extending along 3 sides of the interior, supported by 7 fluted columns with a front of moulded pine panels. An inset clock opposite the pulpit helped the minister time his sermons. The seating was once again replaced. The improvements of 1898 included the present sedd fawr, deacon's chair and a pulpit by the firm of Owen Morris Roberts and Sons, Porthmadog. The central projection of the sedd fawr incorporates a lectern, either side of which is a curved, cushioned bench seat. To either side of the pulpit arch is a door. That on the south formerly leading to the chapel house but later blocked up, that on the north connecting to a rear schoolroom. Education was an important part of nonconformity, with the aim of teaching everyone to be able to read their own Bible. Therefore, a single-storey schoolroom was built in the late 19th century. The present ceiling was inserted in 1908. It is boarded with large panels, moulded ribs and a central ornate ceiling rose, which replicates the wheel window of the pediment. The congregation originally gathered in candlelight. In 1857, gas lamps were installed, and it wasn't until 1953 that electricity was finally put in. The dwindling congregation were no longer able to support the chapel, and in 2002 it was given to the Welsh Religious Buildings Trust. Today, Peniel Chapel is one of only 5 Grade 1 listed chapels in Wales. Its magnificent facade stands as a symbol of the enthusiasm and ambition of the nonconformist movement.